It is so good to see you all. And you know we are on the eve of an election day. And I don't know if anybody's told you yet, but did you all hear? You are first in the nation. My friends, all eyes, not only in America, but all over the world, all eyes are on South Carolina right now. And I hope you are fired up. Come on, you can do better than that, Orangeburg. Are you fired up? That's what I'm talking about. It is so good to be joining you here in my hometown of Orangeburg, South Carolina. And I'm joined by South Carolina State's own Jim Clyburn. And of course, the MVP of American politics, our Madam Vice President Kamala Harris. You know, as a black man from Orangeburg, the history that surrounds us today is not lost on me. Next week will mark 56 years since student activists from this great institution stood up to protest the injustice of Jim Crow, and they were met with intolerance and violence. 56 years since 3 students were killed and nearly 30 more injured because they sought freedom and equality. These young leaders fit into this line that I call protectors of America's freedom. Folks like Sarah Mae Fleming, who sat on a bus 17 months before Rosa Parks did. Folks like Robert Smalls, who was a slave, but he got on a Confederate ship, stole it, took it up to Union territory, and then came back to be one of the first black congresspeople from the state of South Carolina. These are folks who refuse to allow either slavery or Jim Crow to be the status quo here in South Carolina. They are why, as a young black boy, round-headed black boy here in Orangeburg, I often wondered, what would I have done during the civil rights movement? Would I have marched? Would I have organized? Or would I have sat silently on the sidelines? My friends, I no longer have to wonder, because this is the civil rights movement of our time. If you look around the country, what do you see? You see judges and politicians like Lindsey Graham and Tim Scott who want to tell women what they can and can't do with their own bodies. You see black history being removed from school textbooks and curriculums. People are actively trying to prevent us from voting. What was once Dr. King's fight has now become our fight, our cause, and our mission. The torch has been passed over the years, and now each and every one of us is carrying it. So what will we do? You know, in Dr. King's letter from a Birmingham jail, he said something that lives with me today. He said, we will repent in this generation, not only for the hateful words and actions of the bad people, but for the appalling silence of the good people. So again, good people of Orangeburg, so again, good people and good students of South Carolina State University, what will you do? Will we ignore the lessons of the past and let them roll back the clock? Or will we rise up to confront the injustices of our time and reclaim the soul of our nation? I know what my answer is. I know what Joe Biden's answer is. I know what Kamala Harris's answer is. Because in 2020, because of our vote, South Carolina, they went to Washington, D.C., and they delivered on our hopes and our dreams. Because we made our voices heard and voted for Joe Biden, what have we seen? Reporters often ask me about that. What have you accomplished? Well, let me tell you. Over $7 billion invested in our historically black colleges and universities. If I ask y'all today, how many of you are diabetic, pre-diabetic, or know somebody who is diabetic, most of us would raise our hands, particularly here in South Carolina. Well, folks, the price of insulin now is $35 a month. In no other country in the world do young people start off life with such an anchor like debt tied around their legs, but they do here in this country. Well, this is the very first president and vice president who not only talked about it, but they did something about it. Over $137 billion, that's with a B, $137 billion in student loan debt for almost 4 million people. Folks, that's real chatter. High-speed internet across our rural communities. An infrastructure generation that is paving our dirt roads and repairing our highways. I remember when Joe Biden was on the stage in Charleston, South Carolina, and he said, I'm going to make a promise to you. If I get an opportunity as president of the United States, I'm going to appoint the first black woman to the U.S. Supreme Court. And we all remember the hearings. Lindsey Graham in that hearing, Ted Cruz, they called her everything but a child of God. But guess what they're calling her today? Madam Justice. That happened because you all went and voted for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. You all made that happen. I don't know if you know this country is 248 years old. In its 248-year-old history, only 98 black women have ever been federal judges. 248, 98. In Joe Biden's 3 years, he has appointed 35 black women to the federal judiciary. 60 of his 170 judges have been black. Black folks only make up 13% of the population. So he's trying to make up for the injustices that took place in the past. And we couldn't have gotten any of those judges but for that tie-breaking vote from Madam Vice President. Folks, and I'm going to leave with this, and then I'm going to bring up our next speaker. I want you to think about this. 40% of enslaved people came to this nation in bondage through the port of Charleston. 90% of black people across this country can trace one ancestor right back here to South Carolina. When Joe Biden decided to change this presidential calendar, Iowa and New Hampshire have been kicking this off for the entirety of my life. I turned 48 on Monday. For all 48 of those years, Iowa and New Hampshire have started this process. They've always gotten the opportunity to vote first to pick the most powerful person on the planet. But this president came to the state and he saw us, he heard us, and he said, you know what? You matter. So the progeny of those folks who were in bondage, the progeny of the folks who picked cotton, now those folks won't be picking cotton, but will be picking presidents. Folks, for far too long, we've been relegated to the back of the bus, but now we're driving the damn bus. And I want you to understand what your power is. Don't be silent. Show up. Make sure that your voices are heard not only here in Orangeburg, not only here in South Carolina, but all over this country. That is the power that you have right now. So young people, don't you sit there and say, I'm not going to vote. There is too much at stake. If you believe in a better world for yourself, your family, and your community, then you got to stand up and exercise that right. Don't let anybody take it away from you. It is too invaluable. Here in South Carolina, we have a motto, while I breathe, I hope. But folks, that ain't big enough. It ain't big enough. We know from our good book, it says faith without works is dead, and I know from life, hope without action is never realized. So folks, while I breathe, I hope can't be our motto. It has to be while I breathe, I vote, because that is how we make hope real. That is how we make hope real. Let me tell you somebody who fights every day to make hope real. Somebody that I call my political father. Somebody who has given so much to the state. I can bottle up all of the Republicans in Congress from South Carolina, and they still don't equate to this. It is indeed my honor to introduce our next speaker, who needs no introduction. He's a hero of the civil rights movement in South Carolina, a leader in the United States Congress, a great congressman, an alumni of South Carolina State University. Folks, bringing up to the stage the one and only Jim Clyburn.
Hey, how's everybody? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jamie, today. I need not be introduced to today, students or graduates. This is home for me. So much. I just want to expand just a little bit from Jimmy, since he took all of my speech. You know, a lot of times it's about what has happened, done. But every election is about the future. What lies in my future? Let me say something about student loan debt relief. Jamie has told you about the $137 billion in debt elimination that's already taken place. He's mentioned to you that covered 4.3 million people. What he did not mention is that for the next 4 years, every 2 months, another 75,000 will become eligible for that debt relief. We've got to decide, who do we want to be in charge of that program for the next 4 years? The guy who tried to eliminate it with all 3 of his budgets, or the guy who transformed it and turned it into what it is today? That's what this election is about. It is about the future of student loan debt relief. It is about the future of Medicare. It's not just that he put a cap of 35 for senior citizens, everybody on Medicare. He has also put in place a law that allows, come January, all Medicare recipients to be limited to $2,000 a year for all of their medical care, no matter what it's for. Whatever that care is, no matter how expensive the medicine is, no matter how expensive the operation may be, no matter how expensive, if you are on Medicare, if your mother or your father, your grandparents are on Medicare, they will not pay more than $2,000 a year going forward. That is what is in this law. That is what is on the line. Do we continue to have that kind of what I call reform in our medicine, or do we sit home and allow someone to get elected who has told you with his actions? You all saw him a couple of weeks ago making fun after John McCain when he did his thumbs down on their attempt to eliminate the Affordable Care Act. Y'all saw what he said. He tried with his Republican friends, he tried 60 times to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. But there was a little guy sitting over there counting votes on the Democratic side, and he failed 60 times. Given an opportunity, he has told you what he's going to do. My advice to you is to believe him and to show up and make sure he never occupies the White House again. You know, there's an old saying, Fool me once, fool me twice, shame on me. Now, we've been fooled once, and that's his shame. We stay home and get fooled the second time, that is our shame. And that is not what we want for our future. Let me close with this, because the Vice President is ready to come out here. I told somebody back during the campaign 4 years ago, they says, I hear Kamala Harris is a member of the Divine Nine. I said, yeah, and so am I. Well, now, are you Al? I said, no, I'm an Omega. But come November, I'm an AKA. Just that simple. I don't mind being an AKA on that day. I want to close with this. Way back, the last time we had any kind of activity in this country like we've seen and saw on January 6, 2021, was in 1876, when we had a presidential election. In 3 states, Florida, Louisiana, and South Carolina, up there 21 votes. And Samuel Tilden, missed becoming president by 1 vote in the Electoral College. And Rutherford B. Hayes, promised the pro-segregationists, the white supremacists, the redeemers, give him their votes. He would bring an end to Reconstruction. So they threw the election into the House, and they put together a committee of 15 people, and the committee voted 8-7 to give the presidency to Rutherford B. Hayes. By 1 vote, Tilden Hayes missed the presidency. Tilden did. By 1 vote, Rutherford B. Hayes became president, brought an end to Reconstruction. Jim Crow came into being by 1 vote. 1 vote could vet what our future is. I would hope that not would allow yourselves or your family members or your friends to be on vote. We have got the vote. We got the vote. Come November, and think about your future. Who are in charge of your future? The person who is showing you that he has very little respect, who is demonstrated with dignity and respect, that he believes in a future where freedom and where democracy is the law of the land. Thank you so much for being here, South Carolina State. And remember, I want every state college person to repeat: tenacity. That's
Good afternoon, Bulldogs. My name is Carrington McClurkin, and I am proud to be serving as the 87th Miss South Carolina State University. Now, we know our next speaker as a leader, a history maker, and a true inspiration to people around the world. Like us, she is a proud product of an HBCU, and like me, she is a member of the first and the finest sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I am talking about our very own Madam Vice President Kamala Harris. With Kamala Harris as our vice president, I can see myself reflected in the White House. I see just how big our dreams should be because our choices are endless and the doors are wide open. As our first Black woman vice president, Kamala Harris has been our voice at the table where decisions get made. She wakes up every day fighting to make life better for each and every one of us. Vice President is fighting for reproductive rights. She is crisscrossing the country right now on a tour to tell the stories of women harmed by the overturning of Roe. She has been fighting for Black maternal health equity since her days in the Senate when she introduced the Maternal Care Act. She is fighting to close the racial wealth gap, announcing a new plan by the administration this summer to confront racial bias in the housing industry. She has helped bring billions of dollars to our HBCUs because, in her words, they are centers of academic excellence that for too long have been underfunded. On these issues and so many more, she is fighting for you and she is fighting for me. The stakes of this election are very high. Our democracy is at stake. Our rights are at stake. Our futures are at stake. Donald Trump and the extreme MAGA Republicans want to stifle our voices, tear us down, and take away our freedoms. Even amidst the challenges we face today, I am hopeful still because I know we are not fighting alone. Because we have a president and vice president who see us and value us. As the future leaders of this country, it is on us to have their backs. It is time for us to organize and get out and vote for President Biden and Vice President Harris so that they can finish the job they started 3 years ago. So now it is my pleasure to introduce a fighter for our freedoms, a breaker of glass ceilings, and our voice at the table when decisions are made. Please join me in welcoming our MVP, Madam Vice President Kamala Harris.
All right, can we hear it for South Carolina State's drumline? Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Can we please applaud Carrington for her inspiration, for her excellence, and thank you for that introduction. Thank you, thank you. And of course, it is good to be with so many extraordinary leaders, including Jamie Harrison. I want to thank him, a son of South Carolina, and the head of the National Democratic Party, and of course, Assistant Leader Jim Clyburn. Listen, I don't need to tell South Carolina what a powerful leader Jim Clyburn is, and he always speaks the truth with courage and with conviction. And he is truly one of the closest advisors and friends to President Joe Biden and me. Leader Clyburn, thank you for all you are and all you do. And it is so wonderful to be back in this beautiful state. This is my third trip to South Carolina just since the beginning of the year. and my 9th trip to the state as vice president. And of course, there were many trips that I have taken to be here and visit with you before. And in 2020, it was South Carolina that put President Joe Biden and me on the path to the White House. In 2020, in the height of an historic pandemic, in the midst of so much loss and uncertainty, the people of South Carolina showed up to vote. You convinced your friends and your family members and neighbors and coworkers of the power of their vote and the power they have when they show up to vote. And it is because of that work that Joe Biden is President of the United States, and I am the first woman and first Black woman to be Vice President of the United States. And an auntie. In 2020, you sent us to the White House because, frankly, we had some business to handle. In 2020, South Carolina said, we need to take on the issue of high-speed internet. For years, I have spoken with leaders from Hemingway to Lower Richland to here in Orangeburg about the urgent need for high-speed internet, in particular for rural communities where students have had to go to the public library just to submit their homework on the Wi-Fi. Because you voted in 2020, President Biden and I are connecting every person in America with high-speed internet, including more than 100,000 families right here in South Carolina. In 2020, you said we need to do more to help folks struggling with student loan debt, the young couples who worry that they will never be able to buy a home or start a family because of their student loans, the mothers who work 2 and 3 jobs just to keep up with their monthly payments. And so, because you voted in 2020, President Biden and I have canceled more than $136 billion in student loan debt for more than 3.5 million Americans. And although the Republicans in Congress refuse to work with us to cancel more debt, we will not be deterred. President Biden and I will keep fighting for relief from student loan debt. South Carolina, in 2020, you said, as you just heard, I say it often, HBCUs are centers of academic excellence. And we must do more to support them. They don't have the kinds of endowments that some other schools have, although they produce leaders of our country and our world. So as a proud HBCU graduate, I made sure we invested more than $7 billion in HBCUs across our nation, including nearly $60 million for the students right here at South Carolina State, to help them pay for textbooks and laptops and rent. In 2020, you told us we need to lower health care costs, especially for insulin for our seniors. In fact, raise your hand if you have a family member with diabetes. Right. For too many years, too many of our seniors had to make the choice of either filling their prescription or filling their refrigerator. But because you voted, President Biden and I took on Big Pharma and we capped the cost of insulin for our seniors at $35 a month. And we capped the entire cost of prescription medication to $2,000 a year. So this is just some of what we have accomplished since we took office. Over the past 3 years, President Biden and I have lowered costs, created opportunity, and are building an economy that works for working people. We have created more than 14.5 million new jobs, increased wages for tens of millions of Americans. Today, consumer confidence is up and consumer spending is an all-time high. And although we have more work to do, let us be clear, America's economy continues to be the strongest in the world. So it all comes down to this. President Biden and I are guided by a fundamental belief. We work for you, the American people, and every day we fight for you. Sadly, however, that is not true for everyone. Case in point, Donald Trump. Former President Trump has made clear time and time again, his fight is not for the people. He fights for himself. He openly talks about his intention to weaponize the Department of Justice. He openly says that he is, quote, proud that he overturned Roe v. Wade. Proud that he took the freedom of choice from millions of American women. For years, the former president has stoked the fires of hate and bigotry and racism and xenophobia for his own power and political gain. He accused immigrants of, quote, poisoning the blood of our country. And after neo-Nazis marched in Charlottesville, he said there were, quote, very fine people on both sides. The former president openly talks about his admiration for dictators and has vowed that he will be a dictator on day one. Understand what dictators do. Dictators put journalists in jail. Dictators suspend elections. Dictators take your rights. And as the great Maya Angelou once said, when someone tells you who they are, believe them the first time. Well, the former president has told us who he is. And it is on us, then, to recognize the profound threat he poses to our democracy and to our freedoms. And let us recognize there are extremists across our country who have been inspired, encouraged, and even cowered by the former president. In this moment, just look at states across our country where we witness a full-on attack on hard-fought, hard-won freedoms and rights. The freedom to vote, the freedom to be safe from the horror of gun violence, the freedom to live without fear of hate or bigotry, the freedom to be who you are and love who you love openly and with pride, the freedom to learn and acknowledge our nation's true and full history, and the freedom of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have the government telling her what to do. And on that point, I know all of us are clear. One does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree the government should not be telling her what to do with her body. So across our nation, fundamental freedoms are at stake. And understand, and I say this in particular to the students, it does not have to be this way. It does not have to be this way. When we win majorities in the United States Congress, and when Congress passes a bill that reinstates the protections of Roe v. Wade, President Joe Biden will sign it. When we win majorities in Congress, President Biden will sign into law an assault weapons ban. He will sign into law the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. And he will sign into law the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. On these issues and so many more, who sits in the White House? It matters. And in this election, we each one of us, we face a question. What kind of country do we want to live in? We each face that question. What kind of country do we want to live in? Do we want to live in a country of liberty, freedom, and rule of law? Or a country of disorder, fear, and hate? We face a choice: cruelty or compassion, chaos or competence, division or unity. Each of us has the power to answer these questions on a daily basis in South Carolina, tomorrow at the ballot box. Because tomorrow, of course, is primary day here in South Carolina. It's on a Saturday this year. And South Carolina, you are the first primary in the nation. And President Biden and I are counting on you. We are counting on you. We are counting on you to vote and to get everyone you know to vote, to send out text messages, to knock on doors, and to make your voices heard. So in conclusion then, I ask, are you ready to make your voices heard? Do we believe in freedom? Do we believe in democracy? Do we believe in opportunity for all? And are we ready to fight for it? And when we fight, we win. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you all.